folks, this is Reniac, and this is week 3 of the StocksByPeopleSafety.net Let's Play Olympics 2, The Confusing Return to Numbers. And as we witness this green guy eating the word start for whatever reason, this week's game is Krazy Kreatures for the NES, developed by American Video Entertainment in 1990. Now, Krazy Kreatures is a simple little puzzle game, or at least it seems to be a simple little puzzle game at first glance. It's actually quite a bit more complex once you get into the various nuances of the game. Now, since this week is a score challenge, and more on that in a few moments, there's only one achievement this week, and that is to completely clear one of the boards. This might sound rather simple, but actually, it's a lot trickier than it first appears. Fortunately, I managed to get out of the way right here on the very first stage, and collect a nice 500-point bonus for doing so. It also means that the stage is cleared away just a little bit quicker, giving you more time to get more stages out of the way, which of course, in a 15-minute time limit run like this, is crucial. The second level introduced is snails, and for some reason pink elephants, and I swear, officer, I never touched that LSD. The clever thing about this game is there are so many different strategies that you can employ. And the thing about trying to clear a board, you can only really do it in the first couple of levels, because otherwise there's so much stuff coming at you. And the important thing to remember if you're trying to complete a board is that you must always leave just enough of the right type of animal or creature in order to make a match. Otherwise you'll mess up and you'll have, say, I don't know, one elephant or two snails left, and of course you can do nothing with them. That's absolutely useless. Stage 3 is where the difficulty of the game starts to pick up then, where we have now 4 different creatures: cats, dogs, elephants and snails. And that's one of the great things about this game. The difficulty curve is really nicely implemented. It starts off nice and simple, but after about the first 3 or 4 stages, this game really starts to change things up and make things a lot more difficult, but not in a way that it becomes impossible very quickly, and because of that, it's not frustrating, and this is actually a really, really neat puzzle game. I have played a fair few puzzle games in my time, but I have to admit, despite having never played this before until this week, this is fast becoming one of my favourites. It starts off really simple, as I say, but it's actually got quite a bit of variety to it. Even more remarkable is the fact this is a licensed game, so considering how bad some licensed puzzle games have been, this really is a little gem, and I applaud Fat Kakashi and Deco Octopus for picking it as our choice for Puzzle Week. It's a really, really good choice in my opinion. It's also a really nice change of pace from other choices that we've had for previous puzzle weeks like Tetris and Dr. Mario. Don't get me wrong, I like block-dropping puzzle games as much as the next man, but you know what they say, variety is the spice of life, and this game certainly is variety. Now, as you can see, things are continuing to get much more complex. The creatures are being thrown in at an even faster rate than before, and believe me, this is not the fastest they will be thrown in. But there are a couple of tricks that you can use to really help your progress through this game. First of all, you'll notice to the left here there is a chain of 4 snakes. Now, I didn't place them there, they were put in by the game, and if you double tap the A button while highlighting one of those chains, you can get rid of them off the screen. Also, you can match creatures diagonally, which is really useful if you're in a tight spot, and you can also set some monster chains. And the third trick is that if you have either completed the board entirely, or you just want to move on to the next stage, let's say that you've run out of matches you can make, if you tap the B button, the timer will shoot down at a rate of knots, and you will end the stage prematurely. And the best part of this is, you will actually get points for doing this. So, you can actually use this to your advantage, and this is what I said about strategy earlier on. Say you're coming to the end of the stage with a few seconds left on the clock. You could use that time to make a couple of last minute chains, or you could tap the B button and get some extra points. Either way works quite well, it's entirely up to you. Another great thing about existing chains is you can actually add a creature onto an existing chain, and not only get the points for the existing chain, you'll also get more points because you made one for yourself and it was longer. If you have any idea what I'm talking about, then please let me know. Here, for example, I chose not to let the timer run out and went for the quick match instead. But as I said, the beautiful thing about this is that you have different strategies and different styles of playing the game, and they all work in their own different ways. Now, here's where the game decides to change things up a bit. Instead of matching animals or creatures, we're matching teeth and blue faces. And these things you require 4 of to match. We've moved away from the rule of 3, which is present in a lot of different puzzle games. Now we're obeying the rule of 4, well, not obeying, but you know what I'm saying, you get my drift. But you can actually use it to your advantage again by creating some monster chains. Another thing I have to give this game praise for is the various different styles of board that are present throughout the game. Here, for example, we've got lots of different nooks and crannies with these blocks separating them, and that can make things kind of tricky. I would actually recommend that you stick to the edges and the middle of the board. There'll be boards coming up later on where there's a lot of different sort of nooks and crannies. There isn't really an advantage to trying to match any chains within them because there's so little space and because your cursor has so little room to maneuver. So I would recommend you stick to the middle wherever possible. And I do like that. Hint number 4, there is no number 4. That's a nice little bit of humour. I do like that the game gives you hints. It's very useful for a first time player of this game, and believe me, the first time I played through this game, I was absolutely hopeless. I was game overing on like level 3, then I got a little bit better and couldn't get past level 7. And now, well, I'll let you decide when you get to the end of the video. No spoilers from me, I am not River Song. This level also introduces question marks. Now question marks have two purposes. They can either act as bombs of a sort, where they can clear away pieces that they're next to, or you can move them around the board and then destroy pieces like that. But they can also be used to make up the missing link in the chain, which makes them jokers or wildcards. And again, it's another staple of puzzle games, but it's one that's much appreciated. And it's also one, if you use the question marks right, that say you've come to the end of the stage, you want to clear the board, but unfortunately there's only 3 of a certain type of, I can't really call them a creature anymore, we'll call them a thing, because these are not creatures. Wooden stacks and teeth and blue faces are not creatures. You can use the question mark to complete the chain and finish the board off completely. Also, you may have noticed a bit earlier on, I mean I was ranting about the question marks at the time, that you can actually do a double chain. What I did there was set up 3, well I didn't set it up, actually the game did it automatically for me. You can set up, say, 3 going down and 3 across, and then put 1 in that links the 2 of them, and you'll get 200 or 300 point bonuses depending on how many are in the chain, I think, or what level you're on. And again, it's a really nice way to get some extra points, and in a score challenge that could make all the difference. Now this level is kind of nasty, I don't like it. You've got this wide space in the middle, and even that's kind of narrow, and then you've got these one-line corridors down the sides and the top, really kind of cramped, and there's a lot of matches you have to make before the clock will start ticking down. That's something I forgot to mention. The pieces will keep coming until you have made the required number of matches that are shown in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. There you can see now it's a 1, and now it's a 0, and the foot starts tapping, that means match like mad. But no, I don't like this, and add to the fact that you've now got lines of 4 to match and lines of 3 to match. Again, mixing things up, that's not bad. But also, now colours come into mind. Using colour as an obstacle is nothing particularly new in puzzle games, but for someone like me who's not colour blind, but I think I've been described as shade blind, it can make things just a little bit tricky. I know that that is the point of the puzzle game, to make things tricky, but that's just my 2 penneth. I'm sure other people are going to disagree, but you know what? That's good. The world would be a much worse place if there wasn't room to disagree on certain things. But getting back to talking about the game, this stage is another one that I initially found quite tricky once, I'd actually done well enough to get up to it. But actually, it's not that bad once you know what you're doing. We're back to just objects that require matches of 4 again. But fortunately, while it's quite a narrow playing area, there's just enough room to include chains of 4 going down. Now as you can see, my strategy for this game is twofold, much like Easy Origami. First of all, I match things like mad to get to the timer phase, and then once I get to the timer phase, I do a combination of quick 4-thing matches, and also setting up some really nice chains to get some extra points. Unfortunately, I don't think I used the question marks to their maximum potential in this run. I didn't always use them to set up extra chains, or to complete a chain when I thought I'd used up all the things on the level. I tend to use them more as bombs, and then I didn't really use the bombs in the right place. And that's a shame, because if I'd used the question marks more effectively, perhaps I could have come out with an even better score. But then again, I'm not exactly displeased with the score that you'll find I've got at the end of this video, so maybe I'm being a little too hard on myself. Another great thing about this game is just when you think you've got it all figured out, it goes ahead and throws a curveball your way. In this case, the curveball is that now we have to match 5 things in a row, and the 5 things are people. Or at least what the game calls people. To me, they're like pink robotic heads, and for some reason, heads that resemble the character Pokey Minch from the Earthbound series, but that's just me, I guess. Now, even though we have to match more things to get a chain here, and of course that can increase the chance of a game over, which is the intention, this actually, if you play your cards right, can really help to increase your score. Because not only do we have to match 5 now just to get a chain, which of course means more points, but you can actually set up some really nice chains, and in fact the game actually sets them up for you in later levels. And while this might not seem apparent right about now, in later levels such as stages 11 and 12 I believe, you'll really see examples where the game sets up some really massive chains for you, and all you have to do is see them and capitalise on them. Now stage 10 here reintroduces the creatures from the first few levels. In this case it's cats. Now I am a cat person, everyone who knows me knows I really am a cat person, but here unfortunately the cat's main purpose is to act as a hindrance to your progress. Their purpose is to actually block the chains of people. You'll notice I get very close to a game over here behind the screen field completely, but fortunately I got my act together and was able to get into the timer phase. Now for this stage, my recommendation would be to get rid of the cats as quickly as possible, both to get rid of them and also to clear out some space so you can then start matching the huge chains of people, which are the things that are going to get the big points here. Matching 3 to 5 things is one thing, and I would still recommend getting them to get some easy points, but matching chains of 8 or 9 as you can do here, especially if the game is kind to you and sets them all up in a row for you, that's something else, and that's the way you're really going to get to the big money. Money? I mean points. This is not for money. This is not a professional competition cast. And here I was a bit more confident with using my question marks. I actually managed to use them in an area surrounding a lot of pieces that were essentially junk and useless to me. That's how to use the question marks effectively. Now this stage is kind of nasty, and again, if I remember correctly, I kind of got close to game over again, but fortunately managed to avoid that fate. And if you want to get the really big points in a 15-minute run, you really need to avoid that fate. Yes, as I say, I'm filling up like crazy here, but fortunately the game gives you these massive chains, so if you're struggling, just go to them, double press A, they'll disappear, give you space to manoeuvre, and then you'll be able to continue on with the game. The bad thing about this stage and later stages is just how little space you have to manoeuvre. As you can see, they are very fond of putting in these little nooks and crannies. And my advice is to stay away from the nooks and crannies wherever possible. Alright, if you need, say, a spare head or a spare dog or cat, you could go into the crannies to retrieve it, but otherwise avoid it, because you don't have much room for the cursor to manoeuvre, and there's not enough room in there to create chains anyway. They're only too long, so they're of use to nobody, really. Now, you may never have heard of American Video Entertainment, the developers of this game, but they actually did produce a couple of titles that you might be familiar with. They were an unlicensed video game company, which might explain why very few people have heard of them. But they developed a puzzle game called Dudes with Attitude. Puzzle games are kind of their forte. They also developed a game called Pyramid, and a version of Solitaire based on the Microsoft version that you get in most computers these days. But perhaps their most famous, or should I say infamous game, is Wally Bear and the No Gang, and it kind of blows my mind that the company responsible for that terrible game, which has gone down in infamy thanks to certain internet reviewers, were able to develop a game as good as Krazy Kreatures, because this really is a terrific puzzle game. It's got a really nice natural and not unfair difficulty curve, it's got a decent but simple concept which gets surprisingly addicting and complex over time, and overall it's just a really well polished game. And okay, it's not so great in the graphics department, but come on, it's a puzzle game. Who gives a damn what it looks like as long as it plays well? This plays really, really well. One final little bit of gameplay I briefly want to mention is that if you hold down the B button while you're actively in play, while things are still coming onto the screen, they'll actually come in a lot quicker, but there really is no use to this unless you want to speed things up on, say, stage 8, and with hindsight, maybe I should have done that, and I might have got even further into the game. Or perhaps if you want to commit suicide and end the game early, but why you want to do that with a game as good as this is beyond me. It beats the hell out of Action 52, that's for sure. Anyway, we're just coming up to the end of the 15 minutes here. I just finished off these last few chains to get some last extra points on the board and mash the B button for good measure. That's my time and that's my final score. 82,570. For someone who's not that great at puzzle games, personally, I was really pleased with that given the way some of my practice runs went. Anyway, this has been Krazy Kreatures. I've been Rainiac. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Until next time, for week 4, whatever that brings, TTFN.